managing reactions. So now that you've got a good understanding of what your triggers look like, feel like, and are caused by, you can now begin to manage them. And the aim isn't to eliminate the trigger, it's to manage the reaction to it so that you are less impacted by it. Everyone gets triggered. It's our response to it which affects our day-to-day lives. PTSD, however, makes your responses more exaggerated, and it's these responses which, when misunderstood, can be misinterpreted and mislabeled. So in your workbook, I've listed a load of symptoms of PTSD. So if you're new and you're not quite sure, have a look through and see if any or how many are relevant to what you're feeling. And it's easy to see when you go through the list how some of those, when given a false narrative and a false backdrop, can be taken out of context and your behaviour labelled as abusive or unstable. And this is why it's so important for you to learn how to manage them. It's not easy, and if you're able to, I do strongly recommend getting expert treatment. But we are going to provide you with some tools to help you. So pre-hearing or pre-meeting, do these exercises. It will really help bring your nervous system back in. And then in the emotional recovery section, we've got a lot of exercise which will help with that longer term recovery. So first off, I want you to look at your flashbacks. So have a look at when you are triggered. Make a note in this. You can obviously photocopy it or create your own journal. What was happening then? So the original trigger. And then what's different in that environment? Because what you'll start to see is that your body is reacting to a stimulus in a way that was relevant back then, but isn't relevant right now. So we need to separate out the two. Also, start using the stop mantra, which is stop, take a breath, observe your feelings or what's going on, pull back and get some perspective, decide what's happening now, what was happening then, and practice what works using different techniques. It might be you focus on your breath, it might be that you laugh, anything that just breaks you out of that moment. And I recommend you doing this before you go into a meeting to help you stay calm and not be triggered into an emotional outburst, which is what your ex wants. The next is to create a strategy for dealing with each trigger as it comes up, and that's what we're going to do next. So, example, if you get a text message from your ex and that triggers you, change the ringtone to a funny voice or a funny noise so that it makes you laugh. You're going to have to regularly change it so that you don't build up like a tolerance of it. But it's just those little things, changing the initial thing that changes the response after it. So in your workbook again, I want you to start thinking about some strategies. So what is the trigger that you've managed to identify? And then what is a way that you can cope with it? And you can't possibly plan for every eventuality, and your ex will consistently come up with new ways to attempt to trigger you, which by happy coincidence will end up making them look crazy. But coming up with a few strategies to deal with the big triggers means that when something does take you by surprise, you can improvise and use one of the strategies that you're familiar with. This builds your confidence that you can manage them and in turn reduces the impact of the trigger.